Well, all right, people. So, I see that they put out this new documentary on the WWE Network about um, really Undertaker in the last few years of his career. Um, and I've seen bits and pieces of it on on YouTube and shit, but it's quite interesting. And one of the themes behind it is, Undertaker. He's getting a little bit older, well, a lot older. And does he still have what it takes to wrestle and put on a good match? Um, and it as time goes on, it really seems like Undertaker has this fear of not being as good as he once was, and it's quite obvious he isn't if you watch any of his matches. And this brings up a point in the wrestling world with a lot of big time names that wrestle too long. They keep pushing it for too long, and they become shells of their formers. That they're not what they used to be. They're like 20% of what they used to be, and it's sad. Whether and it's like everybody's done that pretty much in the wrestling world, whether it be Hulk Hogan. I mean, that the fucking guy's wrestling in 2011 or whatever in TNA. Mick Foley, Shawn Michaels. Was really sad to see him. You know, after he went out in a great fashion at WrestleMania 26, I believe it was, to see him come back and embarrass himself, like it was sad. At least people like Austin went out good. Rock. Even when he came back, he was still athletic. He still had all of the athletic ability he had back in the day, so that wasn't bad. But to see some of these people, continue to go on when they should retire, it's sad. And if you're like a little worse than you were in your prime, I mean that's different. Like, you could make the argument that Undertaker, you look back at some of his matches, like with Punk at WrestleMania, with Triple H. Um, he probably wasn't what he was in his prime, but he still had a lot left in the tank. And now you fast forward almost 10 years later to the present day. He's wrestled some very, to be quite honest, bad matches at WrestleMania. You look at the one with Roman Reigns, just some underwhelming matches. Um, he looked really good with Cena, but then of course that's like a 3 minute match. I don't know why they made it like a 3 or 4 minute match. That was pretty lame. When I was watching that, I'm like, oh god, Undertaker's actually moving really well. And then I see that the match ends in like 4 minutes. It's like that, I think, would have been a good way to go out. So Undertaker keeps saying that he wants this like perfect, not perfect, but like this solid match to go out on. He was even saying that, like with Lesnar, he thought that might be his last match. He thought it might be with Roman Reigns, but he wants this perfect match to go out on, or this like solid match. And the thing is, the older you get, the harder that becomes. And he's like, I don't want to become a shell of my, I don't want to be somebody who's way worse than I was in my prime, a mockery of myself. But ironically, he is becoming that. I mean, he's like 50, he's in his mid 50s, and you could tell he is not in good shape. He's not, I mean, he's okay, but he's really struggling in the ring. You could tell, especially in this last year, that match with Goldberg. Oh, probably a lot of that was on Goldberg too, because he's another one that's up there in age. So I mean, I look at the whole Undertaker situation kind of as a representation of what WWE is today, and what it's been for the last 5 or 10 years. And that's a lot of people who have no business being in the ring, being in the ring. There are some people who age well and do have business being in the ring, even though they are older. You look at Brock Lesnar. Is there really any? Brock Lesnar is what, almost in his mid 40s now, approaching his mid 40s, something like that. Even though he is getting older, he's still a very good wrestler. He's still fast. He's still strong, and there's virtually no difference between Brock Lesnar of today if you compare him to Brock Lesnar of 2000, of the early 2000s. Um, so there is a difference there. You got to distinguish those. But then there's a lot of people who again really have no business being in the ring. And it's sad, they really ruin their legacies when they come back for these matches and they suck, and they're not what you remember they were back 20 years ago. Like I said, Shawn Michaels. And I know a lot of people always, oh, I hope Austin returns for one last match. Really? Like you don't. That would just be terrible if Austin came back and shit the bed in a match. Like I would rather just you retire when you're on top, or at least not all the way down to the basement. At least have some skill left when you retire. I mean, if you can come back and still wrestle, like legitimately wrestle, doesn't mean you have to be on the top of your game. But if you can still legitimately wrestle, okay. But don't fucking be wrestling when you're 60 years old and can hardly move. I mean, that's just sad, and it shouldn't be happening. And it's not even believable that a fucking person in their mid 50s or almost 60s can wrestle and beat somebody who's in their prime. It's just sad watching. So there you go, people. There's my thoughts on should Undertaker retire or not. Well, I think he should have retired a few years ago, if not longer ago, because the longer he goes on and it shows that he's not physically what he was, it really ruins his legacy. It really does. It's sad in a way. That this guy comes out who was once a legend. I mean, he is a legend, but he comes out and continues to not perform to what he used to be. Not even close, to be quite honest. So there you go, people. There's my thoughts on that.